To our panel talk on Black Welsh literature. I'm Robert Oros, and I'm a producer for Kumbukumbu, which is a project, a heritage project by Sub-Sahara Advisory Panel. I'm here with Ophelia, which is my colleague. And yeah, I'm very, very happy to introduce Gareth James, Alex Wharton, and Jade Bradford. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. And my first question is always the same, and I'm going to start with that because I'm fascinated by the process of writing. So yeah, first question is like, can you tell us about your process when it comes to writing?
Am I going first? Hello. I am not the person to ask about this because I'm very, very chaotic. And I am not, I've had a lot of advice in my life about how you should write and what are the right ways to write, and that you should get up in the morning and you should do morning pages and you should have a dedicated writing space. It's not a practical piece of advice, and I don't think it's advice I would give anybody, because a lot of, when we talk about writing, a lot of what we talk about is really wrapped up in classism and the idea of having space and having the money to do what you want to make this perfect piece of art. Most of us have jobs. I am doing a full-time PhD. I have been full-time working in social housing for about 15 years. I now work part-time, do my PhD. Writing that isn't for my PhD is like my third job, right? So for me, writing happens when it happens. It could be whilst I'm sat here, I might have an idea, I might write a paragraph on my phone, might be with my cat sat trying to get in my face. It's usually on the train because I travel a lot to go to events and stuff. And so my process is just to let the words come when they come. I know not everyone writes like that, and I know not everybody writes from the same place that I do, which is my brain is full of ideas and I need to put them on a piece of paper. Some people really they're like, right, I want to find the right way to craft this thing, and then they map it out and they do all these special things and they make it a science, and that's beautiful. It's not me. It's not me and will never be me. So for my process is just, sometimes it will just be an idea and I'll come back to it later. Like last Friday, I went into Cardiff to write an article for someone. I got an idea. I wrote a short story from beginning to end in a cafe in Cardiff. Wasn't my plan, wasn't what I went there to do, but I did it. And so, as I said, it's chaos. Everything I do is chaos, but it works. In the end, it works.
There's no right way of writing, and no wrong way of writing.
Yeah,
Alex?
exactly.
Yeah, I think for me, I often say that the living is the writing. So I spend a lot of time in the natural world, getting out there in nature. I kept horses in my life, and I would always think that time was so important to write, because people always think writing is the actual physical aspect of putting pen to paper. But for me, I have nothing to write if I've had no experiences. That's how I feel, and that doesn't mean I'm going to write about the experience, but it means that I like to be open to the world. The more open I am to the world, especially nature, I feel like my mind has the space to stretch in. And in that space I create then within myself, within my own psyche, ideas seem to trickle in. It's like I open the door to ideas to be able to come into me. That's how it feels a lot. So my process is a messy thing. When I'm out and about, like in the woods or walking in the mountains, I often might have a little notepad, do some scribbles, but it's all messy stuff. It's all, I call it the poetry puzzle, because poetry ultimately is a puzzle. It is a challenge, and I'm kind of trying to tickle out some idea that is kind of that perhaps might have some value to the world, whether that's joy, whether that's comfort, whether that's entertainment, inspiration. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're tickling away at that, and you're trying to pin that language down. So that's my process, really. Nothing in particular, experience in the world, and then allowing kind of words to come to me. But also my writing practice is reading. People forget to, read, and really I have to read widely to find out who I am within what it is that I want to say. So that's also a part of my writing process, naturally.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
You both knew what I was going to say.
It's a combination of it all.
I'll start with what Alex said. Half of the writing process is reading. I would say half.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Notebooks. And notebooks are like buying books. In as much as we buy books that you're never going to read, we write notes that we're never going to use. Writing notes and reviewing those and writing are two, but they're part of the same process. I'm more organised than these two.
Doesn't sound like it's hard.
But that's privilege. For the last few decades, I've had the time, the space to be able to write in my own home without interruption. My process involves very, very loud music that I'm familiar with. You have to be familiar with. You don't want to be taken back. But that loud music keeps away any other distractions, like a car driving past. But if you put a new track on, then you're going to be focusing on the new track. So it has to be very, very... that's first draft, worst draft, 5% done, editing, redrafting, editing, redrafting, editing. That's and lots of notepads and big A3 notepads if you've got a desk, which I am privileged enough to have a desk, so you can actually see the whole project on one page.
That's nice. I like that. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you, Gareth. Editing, sorry, before we jump on the subject, I have another writing process question. I read your interview, Jade, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you said that somebody told you to go back to edit later, to just free write and don't kind of limit yourself by editing it. Don't edit while... Can you explain a bit more about that? That's very inspiring.
I would be a person who would edit things as I was reading back over them to see where I'd got to, and I would do that constantly. And I was was lucky enough to be mentored by Dorothy Coombson, who is the best-selling Black British author of all time, and just a great but very practical writer. She is a person who is like, writing is my job, I treat it as my job, I have to get it done. And she was like, you need to stop editing whilst you're writing the work. She's like, go back to it a couple of weeks, even a month, when your head is clearer and you're not inside it. And that I've written probably more since she told me that 4 years ago than in my entire life. And I didn't come to writing late. I've been writing my whole life. I got my master's in creative writing 15, 16 years ago. It's not new to me, but I've never been focused on it. And I think it is like when you're picking at yourself constantly, you don't necessarily finish things. If your goal is to finish it and then go back and make it good, it kind of opens it up for you a bit. So yeah, that's practical advice I will take. Not everybody will use it, but I think writing is really solitary, and you can it's really hard. And I think this is where sometimes when you see really bad writing, often it is someone who's just got so inside their own head, they don't see how it looks from an external perspective because they know the world, right? We all know these imaginary worlds we created. They're often pulled from our own lives. So we're adding in secret context subconsciously that other people can't see. When you're in the process of writing, you can't extract that. Whereas if you've gone away, come back to it a month later, you can see where those gaps are. And I think you should always have other people who will read your work, people who will be kind to you but will be honest. But if you're doing it on your own, you do need to have that space.
And that space as well, just to add to that, I think partly that space that, in reflection is a bit like, philosophically, sometimes I think the work needs its own space to think and to figure out what it wants to be as well. Yeah. But ultimately, I guess that's a bit philosophical. The fact is you've lived in the time that you've left. By the time you return, you've changed.
Yeah.
To some respect, you might have read another book or you might have experienced something else that allows you to look at it in a different way. Maybe that's a little thing that happens with my work as well.
Yeah. And I think as well, a friend of mine created a film when she was doing her degree. And so we're talking, it was probably almost 20 years ago. She found this film a couple of weeks ago and she sent it to me. And the film was brilliant and it made me really angry because I hated one of the characters. He was like an older man. It was a romantic story. He was quite manipulative and he was unpleasant. And she said to me, she was like, do you know, I'm not sure, but I think when I made this, he was supposed to be a really romantic character. But because we're both old now, we're looking at that and we're going, oh, no. No, he's awful. But it's just that's the thing, that's your perspective. So at that time, she thought that was the most romantic thing in the world. But I bet her lecturers were looking at it and going, oh, God, he's horrible. So you need to be able to understand where your perspective is so specific to you that you're not communicating that in your story. And I think if you are too close to it, you can't always do that.
Going back to what Jade said about the first draft and right. Absolutely. First draft, worst draft, but never stop. I mean, my first drafts always involve things like, if you can't, that word you're looking for, just put XXX. Yeah. That expansion, you think this needs expanding more. Just put expand in brackets and move until you get to the end. I mean, it was Jack Kerouac said, I wrote, what was this book? Was it On the Road? On the Road. I wrote it in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 13 weeks, whatever he said. Spent 8 years editing it. The vomit draft, get it out, get it finished, take a week off, and then go back and start at the beginning. But that's absolutely right. That first draft when you're enthusiastic and you're knowledgeable of the narrative, is when you need to get it down. If you, as you said, wormholes, you'll find yourself never getting to the end and just disappear. Yeah, first draft, just get it vomited onto the page, full of missing XXX, expand here, just little side notes that do not slow you down at all on that first draft.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well because for me, like, listen to like for me, where I'm predominantly writing with poems in poetry and songwriting, I really enjoy the editorial process. I don't see it as like a vomit or something. I see it, the whole thing as something wonderful and unique, and that process, like I say, is a puzzle. That's artful in itself. So I always think, oh yeah, I guess I'm really lucky not to feel that way because I don't feel like my work is like some sort of, mortgage above me. And I think that's the feeling you get when you write in longer pieces. That's something that I've written a bit of prose. I'm halfway through a novel for young people. But nevertheless, my main writing is always poetry. The things I do when just without thinking about anything, I go back and I kind of whittle away at poems. And I love that creative process. I love it. That it's messy and it's scribbly and it's all kind of, it's a bit of a mess, but it's ever getting closer to what that little offering. A poem is an offering, it's an offering of myself. Poetry being a reflection of the human condition. So it's honest, it's authentic. Even if it's wild and wildly imaginative, it's still going to be something I can share with the world. Like so yeah, I have real joy about my editorial process. It's like my own little thing, my own little game, if you like.
Well, the first draft is the freest draft. I mean, it's the only one you don't. It's full of cliches, and you again to stop yourself because this is a cliche. No,
that can't
just
be good, can it? Yeah.
You just put a little. This is a cliche.
I like
close
that.
brackets.
I really like.
And you'll come back to it on the second draft and the third
Yes.
draft. Just get to the. But yes, noting the first draft with you're going to need, but you'll know you're going to need. Of course, it's going to be full of cliches. It takes ages to come up with new imagery.
Yeah. Something I do on the page, I often, again, because I'm not writing longhand, I'm writing poetry often and songs, I often fold a page in half. And so I'll be writing a poem down, and then when there's more cross, and then I'll start putting something else or ideas that I consider like, you could call them the vomit, just the words that are going to inspire the poem. I write them all down on the right-hand side of the page.
Get an A3.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But I like that. I like that it's all tight-knit. And it'll be quite hard to decipher it, really, if you look at it. And I often don't really, if I don't do that, I often use blank pages, and then I'll write from any angle on the page. And I think that's quite nice, because that in itself is artistic. It's something you can do in a smaller form writing, don't get me wrong, but, and just turn it around the next time and just add some notes. So it's just like one big kind of mosaic, really.
I think we found an agreement.
Yeah.
It's not going to last long.
No, it's very it's fascinating to. I wanted to ask this question so bad because we got people writing in poetry form, non-fiction. So I was really curious about that. So thank you so much. Let's jump on the theme for today, which is representation, Black representation in Welsh literature. And I think my first question will be in your work and in your own words, how does your Welshness intersect with your Black identity, and how does that translate in your work?
Do I have to go first again? So first, full disclosure, I'm not Welsh. I am English. I'm from Hertfordshire. And so for me, the question is more, how do I, as a person who's only lived in Wales for just over half a decade, how do I build my experiences in? And actually, the thing that I've found interesting for me since I've been here is I'm from about 30 miles north of London. Everybody's representation of Blackness in the UK, when you watch the TV, when you read books, is very London-centric. And I have always been outside of that. But my dad grew up in London, my mum grew up in London, he came from the Caribbean. So I've always been close enough to that for those things to ring, if not completely true, then slightly true. So being in Wales, and also just being from Hertfordshire, and I've lived all around the M25. I lived in Hampshire, I lived in Cambridgeshire when I was at uni, all of these different places. And actually, we've got our really kind of unique experiences that people aren't telling. And I think in Wales, people are freely telling their stories about being Black and Welsh, but I don't know who's hearing them, who isn't in the community. And so for me, when I'm writing from a place that's slightly different, which is I'm essentially, a lot of the time I feel like a stranger, but I feel like a stranger anyway, is something, it's really interesting, because when I was researching Labi Siffre for the essay that I wrote that's in that book, like, he says, my country's never wanted me. I'm a black gay man. My country's never wanted me. And that's a really familiar feeling. And so when you're thinking about it, you're like, okay, I felt like an alien my whole life, and then I've moved somewhere else, and I'm even more of an alien, because people are like, why is someone with your accent in Barry? Why are you here? It's like, because I want to be here, I'm sorry. And so like having that kind of discourse with yourself around who you are in that context, and having a weird sort of English privilege that I've never had before, because I've always been English, but I've always been English in a way that England doesn't want me to be English. And actually, so how do I converse with that? So when I'm writing stories and they are kind of Wales place-based, or they've got Welsh characters, it's like, okay, from what perspective can I tell this story? Because I don't think it's authentic for me to write from the position of someone who has grown up black and Welsh. So what can I do? Because I really do think these stories need to be represented. But is it by me? Are these people other characters in my story? Do I need to do more research? Research is my job now. I'm doing a PhD, so actually I have access and time to look into things. But it's just a really interesting discourse for me, because I think people who are from, if you were me and you were from Hertfordshire and you'd lived there your whole life, you just wouldn't have all of these different perspectives on what blackness is in all of these really specific places, in the Midlands, in Wales, in Bristol. There are some amazing things that I would literally, if I'd never left home, I would not have heard about, because all we talk about is blackness in London. So that was a really rambling answer, but it's just something I spend a lot of time thinking about, because a lot of the work that I do is around social justice, specifically housing justice. And when people think about black people and housing justice, they think about black people living in tower blocks in London. And that's not the case for like most of the people living in the UK. So you kind of really have to look at really specifically what identity means. And so that leads to an existential crisis. So I do think about it a lot. I'm not sure I have an answer for you, but it's something we really do have to consider, because those things cause tension, but the tension is where the writing gets interesting. I'm going to stop talking now.
That's
true. Yeah, just remind me, are we talking about how it affects our writing process? Was the additional aspect of it?
yes, basically how so how does it affect your writing, and yeah, how does it improve your writing as well?
So I mean, for me, yeah, where I've grown up, it's integral to my writing. I've never lived anywhere else. I've lived in Pontypool in the valleys, post-industrial mining town. That's all I've ever known. And so everything that I create is shaped by my experiences, I suppose, and continue to be. Even though I travel a lot all over the place as a poet, I'm always taking that, the essence of my home with me, for the good and the bad, and everything that I've experienced, the hostility and all of the love as well. So yeah, definitely, I would imagine that has a big part to play in any writer's life, whether you wanted to or not. Yeah.
I don't think about it at all. I grew up in England, and one of the reasons I don't think about it at all is because all four of my grandparents are Welsh. One of them played sport for Wales, so I can't be out Welsh. I've lived here for 20 years. So my experiences are both in Wales and in England. I guess the only time it's informed my writing is when I was writing columns for the Mid Wales newspaper, because again I am now focused on the immediate geography, and then I'm looking at it from a very Welsh perspective. But as far as everything else, I mean, I consider myself Welsh to the bone. That, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't need explaining, justifying to anybody. It would be assumed in my writing, if I had the time to do any creative writing. It would be assumed, and if anybody wants to question that, well, then they'll get an honest answer. So it's not my job. And I don't think it's a writer's job to explain to people who might reject or might argue or don't get it. Not our job to explain it to them. I think our job as black people living in Wales is to speak to black people in Wales. And black people in Wales don't need conversations about race and racism. They don't need conversations about how difficult it is. Slavery trauma. They don't need any of these narratives. Those narratives are to inform whiteness. They are not for black. They're about black people, might be by black people, not for black people. And so my whole mission at the moment is pulling artists' eyes about what's expected of us, what's going to be likely to be commissioned from us, what's the air we breathe, into going, hang on a minute, I'm from a community. And that community, Jade, might be black people who've moved to Wales. You know, that's your marginalised community. And there's a lot of I'm one of those, you know, black people who've moved to Wales. And if we start addressing our narratives to our own communities rather than to white people about our communities, that's the change that I'm entirely fixed on. So if Welshness was to inform my creative writing, if I had the time, it would be, what do people who share my experience require on the page?
I like to call that the permission to be radically boring, because when I'm asked to do things, they are like, you are a black woman, tell me about that. And I'm like, what if I want to write about fishing or my local chip shop, or like, I just want to be boring. Everybody who writes for newspapers gets to write these really, really ordinary things, but I have to be, hello, I am Jade, I am black, I do this, I do that. I have to be completely identity focused. And I say I have to be, that is what people ask of me. It's not what I necessarily put out into the world, but then sometimes you end up in a place where you are doing a dance or a performance, especially kind of post-2020, when people start expressing interest in you and you're like, great, I'm getting opportunities. Why? It's because they want me to kind of start tap dancing.
And that's exactly why I've had to set up this business. It's because it doesn't matter if you speak to the National Poet of Wales, they will all sit there and go, yeah, I'd love to write about daffodils. But if I'm commissioned, or even if I'm sat at my desk and I want to get published, I mean, look at Colson Whitehead. He wrote the book about zombies, Reasonable Sales, writes about black trauma and slavery, Pulitzer Prize. Yeah. So contemporary publishing rewards black people talking about performing their trauma to get published. You know, if you took a non-trauma narrative into a London publisher, chances are they're going to go, well, if you could reflect some of your identity in this, or if you got angry, and they'd be like, oh, could you just sort of tone this down? And we don't understand this bit. Can you put an explanation in? And all of a sudden, you're not writing for black people. You're writing for white people. So this has to change. It doesn't happen in music. I mean, if we were a band, we are going to be talking to our immediate community first, and then eventually get in the mainstream. If you're a writer, you imagine you have to start in the mainstream, and then if you're lucky, and you won't be, I mean, think about it. Benedita Evarista, Noughts and Crosses, all these things are not stories for black people. We revel in them because we see black people, but they're talking, you know, you do not need an allegory about black people being white people and white being black to understand how bad racism is. It's not for you. It's not for us. It's for them. And my job at the moment is to create a pathway for writers to be able to black writers to write for black audiences. And this, when we talk about children's, sorry if I'm going to, but when we talk about, I remember being the only black kid in the class. That may have been was that your experience as well? When they come in with The Ink is Black, the Paper is White, Together We Learn to Read and Write, or a children's book that features black characters, but it's about race and racism, you just want to curl up and die. Your difference has been highlighted. So again, I've never been interested in children's literature because I'm a grown-up, but with the publishing, it's absolutely massive part of what we're going to do, because if you turn, you know, if you fill children's books full of the slavery experience, full of difference, full of this, black children are going to go, you know, reading's not for me, you know. If you put the daffodil story and it features black characters, so children can actually see themselves represented, and it's not about race and racism. It's not something they're going to need to go and wear into the playground at lunchtime because the others are going, okay. It's just a great story that brings your culture to it. And that's the other thing. You can't just have Peter and Paul and then colour in Paul Brown and expect that to solve the job. These children's books and adult fiction. And again, every artist I've spoken to has to, I can almost see everybody working through their back catalogue going, actually, who the hell was I writing this for? Oh, damn. We need to start making a conscious decision, all artists, but particularly writers in this instance, about who is our imagined reader for this. And if our imagined reader is white people, fine. You can drop that in at HarperCollins and da-da-da-da-da. If you decide, actually, this is going to be for a black audience, don't confuse a imagined reader with an imagined market. They're two completely different things. But if you're going to imagine your reader as a black child, don't talk about race and racism. Don't talk about their difference of their hair. Don't talk about things that, again, can be taken off into the playground. You just have a completely human story, whether it's revenge, whether it's leadership, whether it's death, and populate it with black people. And then all of a sudden, it's a really good story that speaks to those children because their culture has been represented on the page, but there isn't a glossary at the back of African terms. There's not that shift to what mainstream publishing wants, which is we want racism, trauma, and blah, blah, blah. And when you get to sort of adult reading, to this day, I've never watched 12 Years a Slave because I don't want to be re-traumatized. And again, so many of the narratives, the books that end up being published by black people are about black people. And to read them is a re-traumatizing experience. And this new business is to change that, to change the writers and to change the books that are available for children and adults.
Yeah, my most recent book I've just published is called Bright Lights, and it's a celebration of black heritage people who've contributed to Welsh society. And all of those are bright moments, they're illuminating moments, because obviously, like you said, I remember in school, there comes to something when you realise you haven't had a positive story about the black, about black history. So I wanted to find stories that could, change the narrative and, balance it so that, because obviously it's incredibly dehumanising to learn those things. But going back to what you were saying as well, the ability to just be able to write what you want, that's something that I've gave myself that power to do that, in the sense that I write poems that reflect my personality as opposed to my, perceived visual external identity, even though that could be cultural and things. But I write about jelly beans, I write about kingfishers, and I've got 4 children's books where it's nothing like that. It's a reflection of my personality and my environment, of course, which would have shaped those poems, which happens to be Pontypool, a predominantly white area. And I grew up with my mum, who's white, and my dad's black. I didn't live with my dad in his house, but obviously he was in my life. So I take all of that, and then that's kind of what I deliver. If I turn up to your school, and I go to hundreds of schools, probably thousands of schools. I've been to about 23 schools in the last 4 weeks, all up and down the country. Then they see me. Then for me, I think, well, if I go to school, then they see me. But I kind of put my personality first. For example, people have asked me before if I can really help writers write characters of colour. Well, when I sat with that, and I realised they're talking about culture more than colour, because if I wrote all the things that I like, maybe I listen to jazz, maybe I listen to the Beatles, maybe I play rugby because I have, and I box, and I do this and that. Yeah, I can listen to whoever I like. So if I gave you that piece of paper with my hobbies and my and things that I enjoy, you wouldn't know whether I was a man, you wouldn't know whether I was a black, you wouldn't know anything. Yeah. So you can't. For me, I might be wrong, but it's hard to say, this is how you write a character of colour. I think people are talking about a character of culture or from a different. If you want someone from St. Paul's or something, go and speak to someone there. I'm a boy from the Valleys, a mixed race lad from the Valleys. I'm not the guy, but I can show you how I might write characters of culture and personality and ideas. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And also the other thing to remember is we don't always have to write for a perceived audience. The way I write for myself, first and foremost, I write books that would have given me joy when I was younger. And that could be zany, that could be rap, that could be really anything, waterfalls, streams, mountains. And then when I write for myself, and then it ripples out and other people enjoy it, beautiful. Whoever you are, that's a really wonderful opportunity.
But your assumed audience is you. And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. If we just go to write for them, you don't have to write for yourself. It seems egotistical or something, but it's not. Because like I said, I didn't find a joy in reading when I was younger, apart from reading lyrics on the back CDs. I played the Beano, and I had a general book of knowledge, literally, where I would just read about any culture. They were my books. But I really loved reading lyrics. And then when I became an adult, like 25, and I started writing poetry, and poetry really saved my life in some respects. For me, then the learning was just opened up. Like okay, who exists out there? Oh, and I found Benjamin Zafran, and I found Lem Sissay, then I find Maya Angelou, and other writers, any writers. But the fact is, I had to do all of that reading to find out where I belong You know, I think so. That's my approach to it. But yeah, writing for myself sometimes is I only realised that a couple of years ago. Maybe that's what I'm doing as well. When I come up with this book and I go to schools and you wow them with all of this wonder and joy and imagination. Then I think, oh yeah, I think I would have loved that book.
Writing for yourself is the most direct way to write for your community.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But your community, like my community, wouldn't necessarily been a black community, would it?
It's
just
like Jade E.
it's whoever they are.
It's exactly what you're.
Yeah.
And there would be a huge amount of people who would find that completely relatable.
Yes.
And also people outside that experience, they can read that story, take a lot from it, but they're not being preached to.
Exactly.
You know, it's not like, it's
Yeah.
like peeking over the fence. So it's it's a much less intrusive way of reading.
Yeah, definitely. And I often, something else I think about as well, which is obviously not the answer because we need to get like this, representation of things and ideas and personalities within things. But I often think as well, I thought, I didn't think I couldn't be Spider-Man before they did a black Spider-Man, for example.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to remember as well, we can remind anyone to see themselves within the personality of people. I mean that from the sense of, I know it's not turning around and saying, oh, Harry Potter's black, but it's turning around and saying, there might be characteristics within that person, that character, that protagonist, that you can identify with as well. That's just to remind people who don't get seen a lot of things that you can find yourself in the personalities too.
I think that's really important. But again, I am screaming out for storytelling that isn't just making some former character black.
Of course, yeah.
But actually have
definitely.
new stories.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
I think at the moment, I think children's literature is doing wonders for that. Like, there is so much good stuff coming out, especially like younger audiences. So your kind of picture books up to your sort of, I can't remember what they call them, junior readers, like 12, 13. There's so many authors, like people like Patience Agbabi, where she's got her characters are time travelers. And there's just this really successful series of books. She is both a poet and an kind of writes prose, and so they're mixed in that way. But it's just these primary school kids who are time traveling, and they're not. I think they're mostly black. I think some of them are not because they're in a community. They're not all going to be black, and it's just there's a lot of joy in that. Or you've got, I don't know if you've seen the picture book, My Rice is Best by Selena Brown. And it's just it's just a really cute book. It's just two kids, one Jamaican kid and one, I think, Nigerian kid, arguing what is best, rice and peas or jollof rice. And it's just silly and it's fun. And as you say, it's not explaining the culture, but kids who aren't black will learn about that, or kids that aren't from those cultures will learn about that. So you are seeing like stuff like that, but also, and don't ask me, I don't have children, don't ask me why I know so much about children's books. I just think there's really great stuff going out. So a book that recently came out by Dean Atta, which is called Auntie's Bangles, and it's just about a kid whose auntie has died, and it's teaching children empathy, because I know people talk a lot about how that is something we have to actively teach children, right? And so it's about a kid whose cousin comes to stay, and his cousin is sad and can't figure out why he's still sad, but it's because his auntie's dead, so they're just remembering this woman and all of the great things about her. But that's a book that will be used for all children to teach them about like life and death and why it's important to celebrate a person. But yeah, but I think children's literature just does a lot of beautiful things that as adults we make it a lot harder to do.
It also gets things wrong. The examples you've given, brilliant. I mean, we've got something coming through our pipeline that's addressing death as well, because it's that common humanity that we were talking about, set to the page, or set in a world that is familiar to children of colour. Where they get it wrong, and I have to name check here, so you might have to probably edit this bit out. Down at the London Book Fair, somebody went, oh, this is a wonderful book. It's doing exactly what you want to do. Pile off down and go and have a look at it. Go and see this publisher. And so I went to see this publisher. Actually, I didn't go as far as seeing the publisher. I went to the bookstall, and it's this new book that's come out of the Midlands about the mum who wears the niqab. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen that.
And I skimmed through the first couple of pages. And the first page is about the mother asserting that the niqab is something that she wants to wear for herself. The second page is going, it gives her lots of choices and da-di-da-di-da. And my immediate reaction to this is not for, this is about. If you're a little Muslim kid at that school and your mum wears a niqab,
you know all that
this is A, you know this already, B, this is your worst day ever at school. And so When they get it right, they get it right, but they're still getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I will kind of reflect on what you all said and put a question there, like, where do you think Wales sits when it comes to Black literature? Is it something in its own category, or does it survive to kind of like resist those labels that you just talked about? I'm not sure if you have an answer. I don't necessarily. We just like.
I have some thoughts. I don't know if they will constitute an answer. So I think there are two things going on here. So Wales has the power to tell Welsh stories, right? So where we sit is exactly where we sit. We sit there, we can do what we like within reason. But something you have to remember about Welsh publishing is it's very, very different to English publishing. So in terms of the money, in terms of the way publishing is funded, a lot of it's grant funded, there's not huge amounts of money there. So what I have found in everything that I've learned and experienced about Welsh publishing is that there are perhaps better intentions. It's less focused on solely commercial, what's going to sell, what's going to make us money, because the industry isn't about money. If you go to the Big Five in London and you've got a really interesting book and they think, this is really interesting, it's not going to make us any money, they're not going to pick it up. That's just the fact. So you have the opportunity there to be a disruptor. But there is also lots of small presses, magazines, people who are specifically trying to do something interesting for people who want to hear different narratives. And that's not just for Black people, that's all different things. So it's a very, very creative and very inventive. And I'm not saying you don't have those things elsewhere, but I think it's predominantly that compared to something that's a really commercialized market. Now, the reason why that is good and bad is because people need to eat. So I can tell my story. I could go out now and I could speak to someone great and I could be like, I've got this collection of short stories. I've worked on them really hard. They're really great. I could maybe even get a publishing deal a lot quicker than I could in England. I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. So Wales has a great opportunity, and nice is a terrible word to use because it's not very descriptive, but a really nice approach. It's closer. You can go directly to a publisher and you can form a relationship and get a book published. There is like Literature Wales, a really great organisation, really supportive. Books Council also, all of those people are trying to do something genuine with literature. But as an author, can I pay my bills? Can I eat? Can I buy cat food? So it's like what I think Wales needs is, we know what we've got, and there's just such a wealth of like talent and enthusiasm and people who will genuinely do all this stuff for free. But is that fair? And how do we, as a country, then put ourselves on the world stage if we don't have the money to do it?
Well, the City of Literature, Aberystwyth City of Literature is a huge, UNESCO City of Literature is a huge opportunity to do exactly that. You are right. Welsh publishing is small, underfunded, and dominated not by a big five, but a very small few. My experience of the publishing industry in Wales is that, for as far as Black writers are concerned, they are interested and motivated for diversity and inclusion, but it's done in bursts. Mm-hmm. So the reaction I get from Black writers is, I won a prize and I got my book published. But when I went back the next year with my second one, they kind of looked at me like I was mental. They were just like, why are you back? We did this last year. It's been done. The promotion of those texts was underfunded or wasn't taken as seriously. So a lot of writers feel that Black publishing within Welsh publishing is a grant acquiring tick box or box ticking exercise for the publisher so that they can say they've done it. Some of the copy on their website is encouraging of diversity, but it's encouraging to the point of, if you've had trauma, give us a ring. We want to tell your horrible stories. And again, I'm not sure, Black people, I'm arguing, don't want to read it. White people who it's addressed to have either got it or not. You're not going to change any minds in that, they're not going to, and so the whole opportunity is wasted is my argument. Publishers need sections that are looking at audience rather than, I mean, this is the whole thing. Everybody in publishing, and it's not just Welsh publishing, it's UK publishing, not a problem in America, but they're looking for a black writer. Or, we need a black writer to do this story. My argument is, forget about who wrote it. If you say we need a book that's going to appeal to a black audience, well, you've just solved your black writer problem right there, because you can't do one without the other. But you haven't excluded anybody. So you haven't annoyed anyone by saying white people can't come here. White people, of course you can submit, but we're going to judge it on whether we think this is really relatable to a black audience. If you've nailed it, because men write about women, women write about men, it's doable, but it needs a huge amount of research and effort and da-da-da-da-da. So, but I think the biggest upside of Welsh publishing, and for me, the biggest upside of Wales, is you can move the needle in a way that if we were having this conversation in London, we know this is just a conversation here, nothing is ever going to change. But you can bang on doors in Wales and stuff can happen. You can get hold of CEOs of Books Council Wales, Literature Wales, the National Library, and go, and they will actually listen to you. So that's what's always kept me highly motivated, is my insane belief that you can actually change things in West Wales in a way that you can't if we were stuck in the home counties.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was actually on the Margin to Margin website yesterday, and I really liked what you said on the website about the current trend to publish and celebrate black authors seasonally only, basically in October, and the LGBTQ one in June, and then that's it for the rest of the year. That kind of translates to my question now. And Gareth, when did you decide to switch the gears and establish and fund Margin to Margin books, and what made you?
I never wanted to be a publisher. It's never been on my list of things to do. I came to Wales 20 years ago as a writer. I like writing. I've not written creatively in 2 years. Okay. I've not read for leisure in 2 years. It came about because, it was, I'm going to bore people who've heard this before. It was Gustave Flaubert who said, who's a French novelist of Madame Bovary, who said that one of the best things about writing is you get to find out what you truly believe. And I was writing, the last time I was writing fiction, and my female character informed me that the books that she was being given by her teacher, an adaptation of Othello, To Kill a Mockingbird. She was from Cheshire, and she is not interested in these books. She's not relatable to, and the messages within them are for everybody else in her class, not her. Whereas she was being, and that started all of this. And I thought, actually, books about black people are not books for black people. Books about and for are very, very different books. And what I actually did is started asking people to set up a publishing company for marginalised communities rather than about marginalised communities. And I was asking people to, and I'm going, I'm doing a master's, I can't do that right now. I'm running a bar, can you do this? Can you do this? And then one day I actually went home and realised, actually, I don't want to do it, but I'm really well positioned to do this. And so that's where it came about. So it's not complicated. Books for black people are not the same as books about black people, and that's the same with any marginalised community you care to reference. Mainstream publishers are not going to crack on with that because it's not their problem. Their business is selling to mainstream, so they want books about black people for the mainstream. There's nothing bad in that. It just doesn't serve the black community, and so that's where it started, because nobody else is going to do this. It's a really sort of game-changing intervention, in as much as I speak to poets and I speak to writers, and nobody has sort of landed on this for about thing. Actually, it makes a massive difference. It makes a massive difference creatively. It makes a massive difference within publishing. It makes a massive difference within book covers, art, everything. My argument is that if you focus on audience, all the other things that diversity is trying to address. How do we get proofreaders in who are from diverse backgrounds? How do we do this? You don't have to actively do any of those. If you focus on audience, all those must be achieved for you to have a product at the end. So it came about as duty. It's so important that marginalised communities get books that are for them, because with children's literature and children's books, that's where all the future marginalised writers are going to come from the future publishers are going to come from. If they're not turned on to reading, or even worse, if they're turned off reading while they're still at primary school because of the nature of the narratives that they have to endure, we lose diversity in publishing all the way upstream. If we want good marginalised writers from whatever community, but here we're talking about, so if we want good black writers coming into the future, if we want black people involved in publishing companies, in commissioning editors, in layout, in cover design, we need to completely change how we're doing it now and focus on who these books are actually for. And if there's sort of one syllable of a cultural explanation, it has to go off to a London press to do, because that's their department. So yeah, had to do it. I gave up a bar to do this, and that's not. And so I gave up profit for loss, because as you say out here, you lose money in books out here. It does not. Luckily, I don't have a cat, but it had to be done, and I was well positioned to do it. And that's what I wake up every morning crying about, because it would have been much more fun to have found a little niche that involved being on a beach in Barbados and playing cricket.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
But this isn't it. So you guys, as I said, I'm old. You know, I can get this started and this conversation started, but it is for you younger people and to actually finish it.
I'm not sure I signed up for this job.
You just have to.
Yeah, that was kind of my question here as well. I wanted to talk about this maybe need to challenge and represent and basically challenge the situation in the literature at the moment. And also, I'm really sorry to quote you so many times, but I've been reading your works, and I'm just very inspired. Jade, you said this: I want little black girls to see themselves in books. I want messy, unapologetic black women to be joyfully present. Again, I really like that. Yeah, I want to ask you the question about this. If you can talk a bit more about the ideal representation, and how do you go around in your work, basically how do you translate that in your work?
So I think part of that answer is really, really simple. So it's just, obviously, when I was a child, reading was the thing that I was doing. It was the thing I was most interested in. I didn't expect to see myself in books. And as Alex said earlier, it didn't prevent me from thinking I could do anything. It didn't occur to me that I wasn't allowed to do anything, for the simple fact that I didn't see myself anywhere. So it was just like, if I were to only do the things I saw being done, I would just have had to lay down and die. I went to a conference. I'm going to go on a tangent here, but I went to a conference, an EDI conference, because part of the work that I do in my day job. And a woman said to me, she was like, how do you find the confidence to speak up in rooms when you're the only one there? I said, if I didn't speak up in rooms when I'm the only one there, I wouldn't have spoken until I was 20. What kind of question is that to ask a person? Like, I'm not just going to have shut down because I've walked into a room. You know, when I was at school, same thing. I was the only black kid in my junior school. My brother is 18 years younger than me, went to the same school, same experience, right? So we're not changing at pace. So if you write a character that does all the messy, unapologetic, awkward, bad things that a white character does, then suddenly you're misrepresenting your race. But every single type of person has good people and bad people. And we really tie ourselves in knots when we're just like, oh, well, we have to write all of these good black characters. Like, you can express morality without having to have all of your characters be nice, good people to show that we're all nice, good people. So
Drama as well, isn't it? If everybody's happy.
Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense. And I remember, so I don't know if any of you have read it, very successful book, Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. That was the first book that I read, and I was, how old would I have been? Maybe 34 when that book came out. And that was the first book that I read when I could just actually point at it and be like, that could be about me. There was a point in the book where she goes to a Black Lives Matter protest, and I was at the protest it's written about, and it was like, I found it quite confronting at times. It's a brilliant book, and I absolutely loved it, but I just so wasn't used to seeing it. All of the representation I'd ever had been American, and we have very little in common with Americans. When you actually sit down and think about it, you're just seeing someone who maybe looks a little bit like you. But even so, there are so many kind of things that I saw in that book that were like my experience. It was transformative for me. But people didn't like Queenie because it was really the first kind of millennial book about Black women that got really, really popular. And Queenie's messy. She goes through a breakup. She has a lot of ill-advised sex. She is selfish. She's mean to her friends sometimes. And it's just like, since when did we only want characters that were nice people? Nobody complains that, like, Tommy Shelby is a bad person. Do you know what I mean? So why do women have to be good? And I think the more I saw that, the more I saw sort of backlash, both from inside and out of the community, the more I was like, absolutely not. This is the sort of thing that I want to be doing. Because, of course, I know lots of people who are great and good and kind, but we all have friends who are annoying. We all know people who make bad choices. We all know, at least, and you can tell me you don't, we all know at least one criminal. Like, these people exist. Like, it's not unusual. And I just think, like, as you say, if we're writing for that white audience and we're just like, oh yes, this is my Black family and we're all really good and kind. My family is good and kind, but we're also annoying and weird because that's what people are like. And so it's just so important to me that people get to live full lives. And sometimes that is the permission to be radically boring. Sometimes that is being objectively terrible. Like, I've written a short story collection and somebody read it for me, and it was a white man. And he was like appalled by one of my characters. One of my characters pours a drink over someone's head, and he was like, I think she's a bit dangerous. I was like, firstly, I don't think it's that deep, but secondly, why can't she be, like, why are you offended that I've written this character that's done something that's not very nice? What is the problem with that? Isn't literature supposed to, like, just show every type of humanity? So I just think we could all just start writing books where everybody is nice and Black people never do anything terrible, or they're not annoying, or they're not weird and don't have niche interests. Boring. Very, very boring. So I'm very passionate about it. So if you read my books and when they come out, if ever they come out, and you're like, wow, I hate these characters, good.
Yeah, that's
it
good.
means they're fully rounded
No,
characters.
that's good. That's a good thing.
You wouldn't
definitely.
hate something that didn't feel real, so...
No, the gatekeepers of publishing, of Black publishing, as you've just so well articulated, are the acceptable face of Blackness. Right, so if you're a boxer, a DJ, you're a nurse, these are acceptable occupations, and so it's the acceptable face of Blackness brushes up against good intentioned white liberals, and the space that's left to be creative, to keep those two cohorts happy, is, as you say, everybody's got to be done. We've got to refuse. And as much as that, we've got to refuse the conversation, because the conversation is exhausting. The conversation gives credence. They should not be telling us where we can write. We write, they publish it or not, and if they don't publish it, we'll find somebody who will, or die trying.
Yeah, that's
But yeah, these conversations to keep whiteness happy, the fighting in amongst ourselves, that's so real, but it's so sad, and it needs pushing back against. Again, whiteness is the only cohort that does not have collective responsibility. I mean, in whatever community you're in, when it comes up on the news, you're going, God, let it not be a black person who did that. God, let it not be a Muslim who did that. God, let there not be gay who did that. Whatever the marginalised community, there's a collective responsibility that whiteness does not even need to we need to just start refusing. Let them have that conversation by themselves, on their own, and we'll crack on with looking after our own community rather than trying to justify our existence to outsiders.
Yeah, that's that bit like what we talked about earlier. That's where the actual liberation lies. For me, that's how I've always felt. True liberation is within writing whatever I want to make myself happy, and it doesn't really matter. I don't consider external perceptions of who I am for any reason. I just, when I write, and then I allow the pen.
Such a privilege, though.
Yeah, but I've, is it? I don't even know why would, because putting pen, I've had no education, I've done no masters, I've done nothing. I worked as a builder for 12 years. I found poetry found me, saved my life, and I write. I don't even think it's a privilege. It's just reality.
No, the privilege is in the fact that you have been recognised for your craft.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yes. That's.
Now, if you're unpublished,
Yeah.
you can't just write about daffodils or your own experience
I
and
did,
get published.
No, I did at the get-go.
Yeah.
I wrote about hedgehogs, I wrote about clouds, I wrote about anything I wanted to. No, I generally did. I'm not just saying that to...
No.
No, just to know that there is like that hope as well out there, because I just wrote... And obviously, I became a dad really young, so I was kind of developing these ideas at bedtime, these stories and things. Then, like I said earlier, I was suffering a little bit. When I started writing poetry, I generally was suffering, mentally. I think I was just going through a rough time in life. And journaling led to poetry. Poetry started to make sense to me. That's why I always say poetry saved me.
Yeah, okay.
From at that point, I'm 25. I'd done no studying since I was about 16. I left school, become a labourer, worked in the building industry. So I had no support, creative. No one ever. The interesting thing about creativity as well is I was building, I was doing natural stone tile bathrooms, drawing extensions and doing all that. No one ever called me creative. I wrote a poem and they was like, I didn't know you were creative. I didn't know you were creative, Al. And that's strange, isn't it? How we perceive creativity as well. So, when I would do all those beautiful things, and they look gorgeous, like patios for people, but no one ever turned around and said, hey, you're creative. Yeah, so there's that as well, isn't there? There's remembering the difference, and everyday creativity is really important. But no, just to say that, perhaps I'm lucky in that sense, but perhaps it's just because, I quizzed the writing, I challenged the writing, and I got to the point where it was publishable without anybody knowing who I was. I started getting poems published in magazines in Ireland, in Australia, in America.
That's because you're talented, though.
But this is what I mean. No, thank you for saying that. But what I mean is, because I didn't really, because I suppose I never really understood, maybe it comes from naivety as well. I didn't understand at that time the barriers that for example, people of colour might face in the world of literature, because I'd faced them in every industry anyway. So it was just another game. It was just another thing, and it was more like, for me, do you see what I mean? When I would look back at those poems and I realised the joy of writing, and then education outside of the school place, though. Do you know, not someone saying, hey, look at this.
Yeah,
and
hometown.
Don't get me wrong, in my early 20s, I'd started, empowering myself with reading American civil rights, as, one black youngster might do, and I loved it, reading about Malcolm X and reading James Baldwin and all those things. They showed me that knowledge is power, and that, there's so much courage within education, there's so much power within educating yourself, so you can speak articulately and all these other things, so you can generally just express yourself, in an articulate way, and then therefore in an authentic way, in a sincere way, and that helps from the get-go. So I wouldn't really think too much about what I was writing. I just wrote things that brought me joy, brought my sons joy. That again, that rippled out. But I remember looking back as well and thinking, and then afterwards reflecting, being proud, or whether it's proud, I don't know, but the realization that nobody knew how I looked when I was sending those emails off and getting published.
There's a bit of that as well.
Do you know what I mean?
For Wales as well.
Yeah, and
so
then
people think, can't be,
Yeah, that gave me a bit of confidence in my writing, because then when I started publishing more and more, and then, when you become a face of your own, I'm not saying it's literally that loads of people, no, but, naturally you go to open mics and you do this, and then people are like, oh, I see that, yeah, I'm trying to get a poem published in that, and that might be a white person, for example. Oh, The Caterpillar, for example, was a really lovely children's literature magazine in Ireland. I've been published in that numerous times. So then I started working with people, maybe this, maybe it's that. But it wasn't a case of like I was black or anything. There was no other in that. It was just, okay, so you've been published in that. Like, how did you manage that?
So you snuck it.
Perhaps that's what it is, but I'm always unapologetically me.
No, absolutely.
So it wouldn't matter to me whether it was considered snuck or not. I don't think I could sneak in anyway. I'm far too loud and I'm far too kind of boisterous and just, I'm a menace in the sense that I write poems that bring zany poems. When I'm in schools, for example, and I read a poem about Mr. Slime, this slug who lives in my kitchen and gives me a hard time. At night, I'm the slimy king of the kitchen. You think you know it all, huh? You know nothing. And I'm just like, that again is imagined empathy. And you need that, because you need the ability to write from the perspective of a tree. bee or from a hedgehog or a slug. Therefore, you need to recognize what that means when you're writing from a perspective, when you see me, that, oh, that guy's black as well. What I mean is that liberation is within my writing about anything. And I hope that we can all reach that stage where we don't consider whether, for example, this character is going to come across mean or whatever. We must just, and everyone and anyone must just unapologetically write that story. But I get it as well, because you might think, oh, it might not get published. But I've never thought that way either, because I've always just worked really, if I didn't have the money, I'd be plastering tomorrow. Yeah. If I've got, becoming multifaceted helps, I can work with my hands, even on the page is still with my hands, because like I said, I write a notebook. So I build a poem the same way as I build a wall. Of course. So I feel that, and again, that is a privilege to be able to say, okay, I'm going to hop off here and earn my money as a writer. I've been 6 years writing full time, but it's not really writing. It's my main work is performing in schools and festivals and things, like I said. So I get it. If that slowed up, I'd be back on the tools.
But you've worked very, very hard. I'll withdraw the privilege. But
I work relentlessly. I just work and educate myself constantly. Really.
I'm going to go with rare, and I think what we want to see is it not being rare.
For sure. That's why I hope that when people see just my passion for the power of language and literature to improve or even change or save our lives, that's what I hope they take from me more than anything, and I'm willing to help anyone. I don't have all the answers. Like I said, I didn't study it in that sense, but I'm well read in that sense. So my learning was self-directed and was everything I could get from the library, really. And as an adult, though, not when I was a child. I didn't have that joy of reading then.
But I think, just sorry to interrupt you, to talk about you to your face, but I think that your energy, your passion, the fact that you say you do this from a place of joy, I think that is central to your success. I think if you had not believed in yourself, or not just put all that stuff aside and just thrown stuff out there, you wouldn't be where you are now. But you do it from a genuine place of actual joy. And that, I think, that's rare with anybody. I meet so many writers who are just I'm tortured and I'm in the corner and I don't want to talk to anybody. And you being just an exuberant person, it makes people want to be around you and want to work with you, and that's a really nice thing. Thank you very much. That's cool. And that's what I hope. It's all about celebrating, isn't it? When you look at Paul Robeson and all these people, they were celebrating and they're maximising their human potential, and that's what I was thinking. I read a quote when I was studying Bildungsweg, actually, that true professionalism is the pursuit of excellence, not only competence. And then I realised there and then that I've always been pursuing true professionalism, not because I've got certificates to say I'm a professional in anything, but because I've always worked my hardest. Even like when I was building, I would always try and be the best.
The best wall ever.
Well, the thing is, because when you think about imposter syndrome, for example, well, I look back and I think, well, because I haven't got any of that, there's not an ounce of it, obviously, because how could I? Because
I'm brilliant.
No, it's because if you come from a different industry, like when I was a plasterer, for over a decade, right? Just imagine you came to me and said, hey, Alex, you're a plasterer. I'm thinking about getting, my sister's looking at getting an extension. Are you any good? Imagine you turn around and went, don't know if I'm that good. I honestly don't know if I'm that. You should go with... No, you have to say, of course I'm going to get the job done. Let's have a look. Absolutely. And obviously that comes... You can only do that when you develop. It would be daft to just go around saying that you're good at things if you're generally not. But if you... Like me, literally, if I spend all my time... If I'm not watching TV, if I'm not really doing much else for over a decade, 12, 15 years, other than reading, quizzing, challenging the mind philosophically, psychologically, nature, lovely, just adding all this these wonderful things to my brain, then of course I'm going to be confident to say, if someone comes to me for a commission and says, do you think you can write with this, Alex? And if I feel happy enough to, I can turn around and say, I think I can do that. I'm going to do that.
You could fit in with us, couldn't
you? Yeah. But I think that's I'm trying to, I hope that, like you said, I hope that I can give people, because, having a lack of confidence is an awful, it stops you doing something that you're meant to do. Totally. So I'm not out here saying, there's a difference between arrogance and confidence, isn't it? I hope I would never come across as arrogant. At first, sometimes I might, but then when I explain, it's not because I'm arrogant, I just believe in the hard work I've been doing for a long time.
We're not arrogant, we're just genuinely brilliant.
But isn't it true, though?
It's totally true.
I think that, and honestly, that's the thing.
No.
And I see that wonderful light in youngsters, because obviously I go to so many schools, skills, and I see them when, they're thinking, oh, no, I can't do it. And I'm the first person, no matter who they look, who they are, what they look like, is to say, hang on a minute, that's a fantastic line. Bring that up a second. Let's switch that line around. You've already nailed it. Let's go further than that. Let's explore the right end.
Let's make the other line just as this line.
Yeah. Let's not be afraid. And if you write something that sounds a bit boring, it's probably because it is boring. So switch it up and do it again. Let's have a look. It's never meant to be easy. Nothing good comes easy, does it?
I've got a new friend. Two new friends.
Oh no, it's fine. You just leave me out.
We're all friends here. Yeah. That's how I feel.
Thank you so much. I'm going to open for questions from the public. I think we got enough 5 minutes. So if anybody has a question, we would love to hear it. No pressures, though. Yes.
Do you feel that one of the ways of being able to develop larger communities within literature and the arts is to kind of work more collaboratively with other art forms and stuff like that? Do you feel like that's a way to, one, share exposure and share just what's going on in the landscape within the arts? Because like we're saying, funding is terrible for all of the arts, but there are ways to collab in a way to support each other. How are your thoughts within those sorts of landscapes?
So I would say that people need each other.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, people need each other. And almost all of the creatives that I know that are working full-time as a creative are, say, they will be a writer, but they're also a photographer, but they also are a director. It's great to have all those things in your arsenal, but yeah, the bigger you can make your community, the better. People will be sick of me, and it's because I've worked in housing for so long. I know nobody can do anything without community, and if the only community you have is the people that do exactly the same thing as you, where's the creativity in that? So you do need to, if you're going to keep expanding your creative brain, you do need to be around other art forms that make you feel differently, and also things that you can't do. I have and this is a terrible thing to admit as a writer, and people don't believe me when I say this, I don't have a visual imagination. I can't see anything in there. I can't recall, if you asked me to recall my dad's face, I know what my dad looks like, but I couldn't see it in my mind. And I was a lot older than you would expect before I realized that other people could. So working with someone who could paint or is a sculptor, they would open my eyes to things that I can't see, because I can see them when my eyes are open, but when I'm sat at my desk imagining things, I can't see anything. And so just people who have skills that, not that, because we can all acquire skills, but not just skills that you don't yet have, but skills that you may never have, just open you up to so many different things. And it's just like Alex was talking then about looking at lyrics. It's that's the thing. Lots of people get into writing through listening to songs because they understand wordplay. When a teacher says to you, oh, look at this, look at these different types of words, or look at this metaphor, it can feel really dark and heavy for people, and it's hard to understand. But if you say you understand what that rapper is saying in that song, and it's often very complicated, but you get it. And so I think having community, most important thing in the world, but different art forms can teach different things, but also different experiences, right? I don't think that people would think that me having worked in social housing for 15 odd years would make me more creative, but it has, because I've met more different types of people than I ever would have done. It wouldn't physically be possible for me in my personal life to meet all the different types of people that I've met through the work that I do. So yeah, it is very important. And also, it's just fun. If you are privileged to have a creative job, then finding ways to make it even more creative when you're doing the same thing every day is a blessing, right? So yes, do it all the time.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think the same. Yeah. I didn't know if that was going to extend on to us then. Yeah.
Yeah. Publishing.
Yeah.
You can't do publishing by yourself. Right? So Network. Hi.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I've worked with dancers and animators. I work with Cardiff University at the moment, creating animations. Naturally, that's been a really lovely thing. They've just made now another film for me. They made 2 last year, one rap song, one poem, and then now they've made one based on Mr. Slime that I was just talking about. And it's amazing, by the way. But I would say, I often say to creatives, you do have to think outside the box. The reality is, I wouldn't be able to afford to make animation. Ultimately, I might travel around. I'm a poet at the end of the day. That's how I make my living. But being able to get things creative, it's really hard. And it's sad then when economically it stops there because you just haven't got the money, isn't it? So you also have to be creative about how you can get things created. You know, so sharing each other, you know, and you know, maybe calling up a dancer or whatever it is, and just say, look, you know, I've seen this work. Do you think you'd like to collaborate with me? I've written this poem. I think it'd be amazing if we could get some music to it. Maybe you could dance to it. Maybe we could make a lovely film. You know, so but they might say no. They might say, you know, you haven't got enough money. You can't afford me. Whatever. But it's okay to actually put it on his back and try, isn't it? I think that's what it's about a lot. You know, and yeah, I think that collaboration is key, really.
Can I just ask what has inspired you creatively recently, whether that is an experience that you've had or something that you've read or engaged with? And if you'd like to tell us anything or feel comfortable telling us anything about any of the projects that you might be working on currently?
I'll start this one.
Yes.
I don't get any time to do anything creative at the moment, so that's I just go through other people's stuff. Projects. It's actually a program I want to talk to you two about. I mean, we're doing a annual anthology. Last year we did one with just poetry. This year we've broadened that up to poetry and prose. And the only gate is it must speak to your community. So we're looking for the submissions window is closed, but I will open it again for you to.
Privilege, see that?
Yeah.
I can't, something that's inspired me recently.
We've broadened that up to poetry and prose. And actually, I've just thought of something. So I'm going to, because I said I don't do anything creative and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I spend a lot of time moaning about my job. You know, this publishing is hard. I didn't ever want to do it, blah, 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 blah. And I'd spent a whole morning moaning and groaning to my son, going, this is really difficult and I don't get any money. And then I went back to my inbox and there were 3 emails from poets that I had emailed in the previous week to say that I wanted to include their work in this upcoming anthology. The joy, the excitement, the energy that is created by publishing somebody who's not been published before is so inspiring.
Yeah, that's cool.
That was a great answer. I've thought of, you reminded me of something. So I had a short story published in a magazine, Folding Rock, that came out last week or the week before. And so we went to London, we went to Bangor, and we had an event in Penarth. But when we were in Bangor, and I've never spent any time, I've only ever passed through, there was an after party, which was this kind of open mic event. And there were lots of different people there were students there was lots of different kind of people, different experiences. And everybody was just so into it and so friendly and so nice. And their work was really interesting, people I'd never met. And like, it was the fact that they'd all come together to create this thing and they really believed in it. And that's just like, it's really nice to see people doing things for the love of it. I think sometimes you get bogged down in something being in your job. And I still love it. I am not a tortured author in any way. Like, I feel like I'm misrepresenting myself. But like, I'm not a person who struggles to put pen to paper. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't, like, it is something that I love doing and have loved doing consistently for 40 years. So it's not something that I struggle with. But like, sometimes you are just doing things on your own. And sometimes you're just like, oh God, I've got to reach this word count. And it becomes just your job to get the thing finished. But like, going and meeting all those people and people just being kind and nice and kind about my work because they'd read it in the magazine, but also just nice to each other and expressing themselves. I don't know, like, I go to quite a lot of open mics and there's people, it should be people being experimental. So then you start to hear things that aren't polished but are very real to the person. And I find that really, really interesting when it's done well. There was some also hilarious things there that were maybe not as well thought out, but that's the nature of the game. And all of those things and people that you meet, like meeting people, and I am an indoor cat. I'm very much not a person who is naturally super, super social, but like, in fact, it was you that said this to me. Do you see? Ruin my life. I did a workshop a couple of years ago when I was on Representing Wales, and I said to you, I hate networking. I don't know how to do it. I don't like going up and speaking to strangers. And you were like, but you're going to events, you're out there, you're doing things, you are networking. And that really changed my perspective on it, because I was just like, oh no, all of these things that I actually enjoy doing are networking as much as me going and shaking hands with random people in a room full of really boring people, you know. But like, it is hard for me sometimes to want to do those things. Spend 5 hours on a train to speak at an event for 5 minutes and then spend 4 hours with strangers. Absolute nightmare. But actually, it always benefits you every single time, even if you're a weird introvert that doesn't want to go outside.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like all of that, and for me, like being in schools, I'm really lucky to, it's because I get to go to schools. They often say to me, for example, just something that came to mind. I got a poem called Jelly Bean, and then which is all about someone picking up a dirty, horrible, hairy, stinky jelly bean and eating it, you know. And then I wrote a poem called Guilty, which was all about that same person getting caught. Well, I remember reading this up in Teen Newydd, the National Writing Centre, with a group of boys actually from a school in Birmingham. They were like, "We like those, Al. Maybe you should do a poem about that person going to jail." So I went straight back to my room and I started writing this poem. Then I realised it should be a blues song, and it was like, so it's, you know, that was the Jelly Bean Blues. And now the kids are saying to me, "You should go and like break out, you know, the Jelly Bean breakout." And it's just like, so that creativity just flows naturally. Children, they're not afraid to ask questions, and I think that's something we should remember as adults as well. Curiosity is everything to a creative. You ask questions, you get answers. They're not always the ones you want, but you can use. They're something. You know, they are something. So asking questions, being inspired by anyone, whether it's a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old, it really doesn't matter. They might just have something for you. That's kind of where a lot of inspiration lies for me. And I think the more that you do, the more that you get. It's one of those things that kind of come around. I think Maya Angelou said something like that, but she said it better. But it's, yeah, I feel like that. So if I'm in, for example, people talk about writer's block. Well, for me, I don't get that, only because I'm working different avenues. I would otherwise, like if I'm writing a poem that I think is for a young person, for example, and then that goes a bit slow, I might just hop over to something that's a bit more complex and like, you know, historical, maybe I'm doing something for the Welsh Government, or I might hop over to something I might be doing for the Brecon Beacon, something natural, you know, so, something about nature. Or then it might turn into a song or a play. So that's the way, some of those things never see the light of day, but it keeps me moving. And also, like I said earlier, getting out and experiencing the world, living is also the writing. So I don't see the writing as just that specific thing on the page. I'm inspired just by being outside and opening my mind and opening myself to the world and humanity, I suppose. I always thought I was a bit of a loner. I like going and I'm walking in the woods with my dog. Like I said, I had horses. I always thought that I really loved being alone. But then I've realized, actually, how can I say that when I'm already working with, you know, thousands of people every month, basically. So it's not true. I like people. I do like people, which is nice.
I like children. The children are little.
That's why we have such an important role to nurture a wonderful light within the youth, you know, within the youth of today, isn't it?
But they're also little wireless chargers, aren't
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is when we write for children, you know, like I said, maybe I write for myself, but also I never write specifically for children, whether I'm writing for myself or I'm always writing for a whole audience. And I think that's some of the best literature that goes forward, because they say, you know, if a book's worth reading at 60, you know, not worth reading at 60, it's not worth reading at 6. So it's kind of like, I write for a whole audience. I know that a librarian or a parent or a guardian or some adult's probably going to pick up that book when it's in a bookshop, and what are they going to think? You know, they just flick through, which is the beauty of poetry. Oh, okay, I'll take this. So you can't just write for children alone. You have to write for a whole audience. That's what I said there, you know.
I'm still gonna, because it's my one chance to talk to you lot, but you two in particular. You say we're not going to, or you don't write for specific communities. Actually, right now, there's a need.
Yes.
Right. So white mainstream has loads of stuff.
Yeah.
They've got all of it. I mean, if you look at any bookshelf and then take out all the white middle class male writers, there's not a lot left. And so there is, I'm trying to suggest there's an element of duty to write for art, because they need, especially now, resources, intellectual armour, narratives that inspire us, because marginalised communities are going to get it a bit rough over the next few years, it looks like. We can turn to the mainstream, we can turn to politics and start going, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that, which, I'm sorry to tell you, nothing's going to change. Or we can turn round, address our own community and go, we can deal with that, this is how. And I think there's always a choice of who our audience is, but I'm arguing that there's, in particular, for young black people, there is a need for writing for them. They've read all the books about them and they don't like them because they hurt.
I think that the book that I've just published is that, because in the sense that these are all inspiring, you know, my creative responses to the lives of these wonderful people who have contributed to Welsh society historically, whether it's Robertson or John Estuntlin or Iris de Freitas Brazo, who actually came to this university. They're about light, you know. And I often say that I'm a creative accountant. I work with light. That's exactly what I do. That is my duty, to add some light to the world, because Lord knows when I'm not thinking that, someone's thinking in the exact opposite. You know, they're thinking about causing harm to the world, whoever they are, sadly. So I have to put out these poems of joy, of comfort, of community, or whatever it is. But yeah, I feel that, and I hope that that book, again, if I'd read that book when I was maybe 15, I would have felt really empowered and thought, you know, it wasn't all, you know, 400 years or so. You don't have to weigh that on my back. This is kind of illuminating, and then this is going to inspire me to read more. Yes, definitely, definitely. So, yeah.
But I'm glad to see it. I mean, already, because I've seen it so many times. This conversation, it involves a reappraisal of our back catalogue. Because the question wasn't asked.
Yeah.
We just wrote what was natural without actually thinking, who's this for? And I've seen Hanan do it, and I've seen Eric do it, and we have this conversation. You can see them go back through their back catalogue going, not that one, perhaps that one. You know, and my job is just going forward, whenever you write, or whoever writes here, just get that question in your head before you start. Who's this for? And again, there's no wrong answer to that, but you have to go into it knowing who you're writing it for. And if it's for the mainstream, that's great, you'll put all your explanations in, and if it's not, you won't put those extra. But you can't do both. Yeah. You can't do both at the same time.
We'll probably have to keep this short. Thank you, everyone. I just wondered how much you have engaged with archives and museums as part of your practices, and whether history inspires you. I mean, we have kind of touched on it a little bit, but could you say more?
I'm old enough to remember history, so I don't need to go to the library, unfortunately.
I sort of have to, because I'm doing my PhD, so if I wasn't, it would be not very academically robust, but a lot of what I am writing, especially when I'm writing about, it doesn't sound very interesting, but you're writing fiction about housing history, you want it to have existed in the world. So I spend a lot of time, maybe not with museums, I was actually thinking about setting up my own archive, because I think social housing history is so interesting and really specific. There's been so many points in history that have been kind of, what's the word I want to use? Punctuated by a big change in housing, like, you know, post-World War, or things that are going on now, Grenfell, where actually housing has completely shifted, and nobody cares about it and nobody talks about it, but it completely affects all of our quality of lives. So I spend a lot of time looking for that stuff, and it doesn't exist. So I would like to create an archive of my own. That's another job I've given myself. But in terms of just looking at history, looking at really specific details as well, because, like, if I put the wrong red bus in a story that's set in 1970, then immediately a person that will there will be like, well, this is not very well researched, it's not well done. And a lot of everything I write is realism. I can't do fantasy, probably because of the brain thing, can't see anything. Can't do fantasy. I've tried doing sci-fi, horrible. But, so everything is really real. So if I didn't do research, I'd be doing a real disservice to the people who are reading it, because it wouldn't be accurate, I don't think.
Yeah, same for me, especially my last book. I'm celebrating the lives of those historical figures who've contributed to Welsh society. They all needed me to, be in the library and just do as much research as I could in every direction possible, really, books, and within the time frame that I had to do the commission, and did everything I could to.
I think what Alex said, and I don't know if you were talking to us privately or it was part of this discussion, memories of short term, which is living is research. I mean, and probably the most important research we can do is to actually be paying attention as we walk,
definitely,
as we live,
definitely.
What people say, what they're like, and that notebook in the pocket. 100%, because that thing you're going to remember, you're not going to remember it. So, living. Yeah. Go to places. Don't watch TV. Don't wear headphones when you're out and about. What else? All that live. Take more photographs, and that will. I mean, that is the best. Obviously, you need to get the bus right. But with regards to storytelling, that's where the unique, idiosyncratic passages, because you'll come away from whatever experience going, I could have sat down for 1,000 years and I've never come up with that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Yeah, it's beautiful. We get to experience the world, don't we? Because we are alive.
We've got
Which
to
is
pay
something.
attention.
Well, no, but it's something that ChatGPT or artificial intelligence isn't doing. It doesn't have a childhood, and
A
it
lot of
doesn't have
people
our
don't.
existence.
A lot of people
Yeah,
don't. You've
exactly.
got to be
We
paying
have that
attention.
wonderful ability to be present and
Yes.
to be, to just recognise the fact that we're alive right now.
On a rock.
We're vibrating right now.
Flying through space.
It's beautiful, and we have a choice. We have a choice to, even straight down to the fundamental aspect of we have a choice to enjoy the work that we're doing. Because, you'll get, no, I know it gets tiring, but it is, isn't it? It is such a beautiful thing. It's so important and powerful,
It's
and these
important.
messages,
Really.
So we need to be strong for that.
Yeah.
We need to remain strong for that.
And strengthen our own community.
Strengthen the community, and you strengthen the community by being presently strong as well.
Exactly.
Exactly. And supporting those who don't feel as strong, of course.
See, we are amazing. We're not very good.
No. We're stronger together, obviously. Any community you want to build, it takes, exactly. It's true.
Thank you so much. I think that's a beautiful ending. I'm just aware of the time. I wanted to say thank you again for taking part in the panel, and congratulations to Gareth for being nominated for the London Book Fair Trailblazers Awards 2026.
Congratulations.
Yes, and
Nominations is amazing.
and also Alex, congratulations for publishing your book, Bright
you very
Lives.
much. Thank you.
Please find Alex after the panel talk to discuss if you want to purchase the book. And I want to say also, Jade, congratulations. Jade just published a very nice, short story here. So take one of those books, it's free. It's on Labri Cifre, and since she's published that, we just can't stop listening to Labri Cifre in our office. So thank you so much for bringing him in our lives. Thank you very much for coming.
Nice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you. Nice one. Lovely. Thank you. Awesome.
Super job, Jane.
Thank you.
And I'm